Hi, this is Mrs. Gabriel here again. We're working on our biogeochemical cycles right now, and I'm going to start off this video by going into the nitrogen cycle, which I know is going to be your favorite of all the biogeochemical cycles. So I'm going to turn off my video so you can get your full screen experience. We are going to go to the PowerPoint. And remember, we are starting everything on the nitrogen cycle. And the CED, the curriculum that is written by the College Board for your test, states that you need to know these things specifically about this biogeochemical cycle. We're going to start the first few slides looking at diagrams again, and we're going to review the same stuff we did with the carbon cycle. They really want you to know about the sources and sinks for nitrogen. And remember, a sink can also be referred to as like a pool or a reservoir, okay? And we're also going to focus on the atmosphere for these two, the two big green boxes, these first few slides. Sorry about it being a little fuzzy. I'll do the best I can when I'm borrowing pictures from the internet. So nitrogen is a very important nutrient for living things. We cannot live without it. It is needed to form amino acids, which are building blocks for proteins in your DNA. So without enough nitrogen, plants won't grow. That's all our producers. The bottom of the food chain. Nitrogen is therefore considered a limiting nutrient. It is required but limited compared to other nutrients. We must have nitrogen. Now, how do you see the big N2 in here? Well, you should notice that it's at the top, and N2 just is nitrogen gas, and the 2 just means it's two little nitrogen atoms that like to be buddies. They like to kind of hold hands. Now, much of the nitrogen in our atmosphere, it's about 78% of our atmosphere, is unusable for us and for plants, which is a shame because we really, really, really need it. But that is why the cycle is so important. So unfortunately, it's not available in plants and animals to assimilate into our DNA in this gaseous form. It has to be converted for living things to use, hence the nitrogen cycle. Okay, now remember this part with reservoirs that we've talked about before. Nitrogen compounds occur in the nitrogen cycle, and this is the part that should be really overwhelming you, and it's okay. You're going to be fine. So let's apply some of the things we learned from all those carbon cycle diagrams. We have sinks and sources and processes. Sinks are also reservoirs. Now, what are the main nitrogen reservoirs in this diagram? Atmosphere, plants, animals. And what are the processes? Ammonification, assimilation, denitrification, nitrification, and nitrogen fixation. So you should at least understand the basic concept of following the arrows, which is showing you where nitrogen could go and explaining that. You have to be able to explain that. And I know all of this is really new and unfamiliar for you. So just start practicing. Practice taking it all in. Just start with, you know, we have animal compounds, and then read the green arrow that could decay. So an animal could die and then decay and then turn into ammonia and nitrate. And these are the processes that you need to understand and be able to explain in more detail. And remember, you could get any kind of diagram in front of you. You have to be comfortable with the material in the diagram, and then most of them you can just figure out. So here we have lightning, and lightning helps with fixation. So we have gaseous atmospheric nitrogen, which is N2, and then you follow the red arrow, which is fixation, right? And then that red arrow goes into fixating into the plants. But how does the fixation happen? And that's all the stuff that you need to be able to explain more. Another thing I want to point out in this diagram that's big, you do need to understand what each of these little compounds represent. So this is something that's going to take a little time for you to get used to. That's okay, because we're going to go over it in the following slides. But you can test yourself with each of these. So I don't have any of those compounds listed in here, those molecules like nitrate, nitrite, ammonia. So this is where you look at a diagram like this, where those things are not listed, and you take the time to practice using those molecules, which you shouldn't know by heart yet. Like NO2 is nitrite, NO3 is nitrate, and that means the nitrogen is now ready for producers. and NH4 is ammonium. So where does ammonium fit NH4? Where does that fit in this diagram? So you have to look for the best locations. Here's NH4, your ammonium, right? And you look at, well, all the blue is where ammonification happened. And these are all steps to make the nitrogen ready for a plant to use, ready for the plant to use. Now I'm going to talk a little more about just nitrogen fixation for a minute. Fixation can occur in several different ways, which we'll talk about in more detail, but I did want to show you this picture because this is important. Fixation can happen on the roots of plants, and it's not just because they're a root, it's because on some plants they have very specialized nodules that actually carry a ton of these nitrogen fixing bacteria, and this is what one of those bacteria look like. So these bacteria help convert the nitrogen gas into nitrogen compounds. That is fixation, when we fix it from the gas into other compounds. Now I like this diagram because it has no pictures, just the facts. You can see the processes at the bottom. You could draw this with some blanks and study from it. You could pause, explain each arrow and its source. You have many options to study and test yourself. My first several lectures have included me trying to teach you study tips. One I think is very useful in making visuals and covering up sections. Then test yourself, then check yourself. On the AP exam, you will be given diagrams that model a big concept. You probably won't recognize the specific diagram. That's okay. All that matters is that you are comfortable and confident in figuring it out, and that takes practice. So let's try with this one. You're going to use your notes or guess what each letter should be. You're going to pause and then play when you're ready. I bet you did great on this. If you didn't, I bet you're looking at this going, oh, of course, I should have known that. So that's all good. This is how we study and how we practice. Now, there's also a mnemonic that some teachers like to use to help you remember all these crazy things that are happening that you're unfamiliar with in the nitrogen cycle. So here's a mnemonic that some of us like to use for remembering it. Fix, nad, and pan. Fix, nad on the left, and pan on the right. Each of these matches, the process matches one of the products. So fix matches the A in and pan, N matches the N in product. So you just have to guess, well, what matches with what process matches with what product? So we're going to be referring to these cycles all year, and try practice filling in parts again and again and again on this, because we're going to keep revisiting the nitrogen cycle too. All right, so you're going to pause, you're going to check your notebook to see if you're correct about just filling in the blanks for fix, nad, and pan, and then say it, fix, nad, and pan, fix, nad, and pan. Don't forget it. Fixation is the name of the process. It's the process converting a gas into a form that can be used by producers. So fixation can occur through biotic and abiotic processes. Remember that. All right, so going to the next slide. Here's what they are. Here's what you should have come up with. How I just presented this and how I suggested you pause and test yourself or check your notes to help answer is a study tip. I provided a mnemonic and a strategy to use with practice. We're going to do a lot more of this. So before we move on to the next slide, guess what all the biotic and abiotic processes or steps are for fixation, just fixation. The biotic and abiotic steps for fixing nitrogen gas into ammonium. You're going to pause, and then you're going to check how does N2 get converted to NH4. What helps this happen? Pause and guess. These are all the possible biotic and abiotic ways that fixation turns nitrogen gas into ammonium. Notice the role of bacteria. This is very important. Also note that nitrogen gas can be fixed abiotically through lightning and combustion. Abiotically. I love lightning. And this is actually why I love lightning so much. So now try to look at your notes or guess what happens in nitrification for our fix, nad, and pan. Also guess assimilation while we're at it. And remember, this is studying 101. That's what we're doing right now. We're studying. So you're going to pause the video and you're going to guess or look at your notes and you're going to explain how nitrification produces nitrates and how assimilation produces proteins. We only have the process of nitrification because plants cannot use ammonia, NH3, or ammonium, NH4, readily. They can't use it yet. Plants need the nitrates in the form of NO3. That's what they need in order to use it to grow, NO3. So another group of specialized bacteria help finish the job if lightning or combustion haven't. So we have bacteria again. All right, now assimilation. Assimilation. This is where the plants can finally absorb the nitrogen into the DNA for growth. Assimilation is like absorbing or eating. Animals assimilate by eating the plants or eating an animal that eats the plants. So a predator assimilates by eating the animals that eat the plants. We have to assimilate the nitrogen to get it to do its job for us. Okay, now, what are the other two processes? What happens during ammonification and denitrification? Pause. Okay, these are the last two. Ammonification is also known as assimilation. It involves breaking down dead things. When a plant or animal dies, special decomposing bacteria break down and convert the dead tissue back into ammonium. Thank goodness all this dead stuff has bacteria and other decomposers to break it down, or it would all just be sitting there, and that would not be pleasant. Now, there are also specialized bacteria which are anaerobic, and anaerobic means without oxygen conditions, that will take the ammonium also. Okay, that was a whole lot of information. I recommend you review and review and review again and again. But for now, we're going to review with a game. So you're going to pick one or all of these and get comfortable with carbon and nitrogen cycles. And that is the end of us taking in all this new stuff. So that was fun. Great job, everyone. This is Mrs. Gabriel signing out.